Welcome to Spirit School. I'm your mentor, Danielle also known as the Squamish Medium. In this podcast, I share honestly all I have learned about the mediumship and spiritual development journey. My intention is to normalize these conversations, to make way for a more confident, clear, and connected wave of lightworkers, serving the world of spirit with an open and joyful soul. Welcome again to Spirit School. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Spirit School podcast. This episode, we can file under the hashtag It's About Damn Time because I am inviting on a great friend, somebody who's been in the collective, who has been to the retreats, who has been, a good peer of mine in this space for a long time. Jessica Meils, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, good. I'm so glad. Did I pronounce your last name absolutely correctly?
Meils.
I have one of those tricky last names too, where everyone's like, no one even attempts my last name.
No,
But I was like,
nope, it's a thing. Like everywhere. My son's name is Oak, like the tree. And so he's like, it's Miles, not Oak Meals, like oatmeal. It's like so funny. But my husband, I'm like, listen, it's his German last name. And he's like, should we change the spelling? And I'm like, it's up to you.
because it is spelled Miels, right?
It's Meils. And
Right.
so,
Okay.
yeah. And so, yeah, it's very common. A lot of people like we used to use a hashtag on our family pictures. It's Miles, and I'd spell Miles, not meals, Meals. It was like so funny, but that's how it goes.
We're off to a great start on this interview. Welcome. No, I just call you Jess. And
Everyone calls me Jess. That's my Instagram handle. People call me Jess.
People call me Jess. People call me Jess. So you are forever Jess to me, but Jess is an international spiritual medium, intuitive healer. You're also a death doula and facilitator and a facilitator of ancient healing modalities, including womb shamanism. So many questions for you. I mean, what else do we want to add to that list, my friend?
Oh my gosh, mother, superhero. I don't know.
Domestic engineer. It's like
engineer.
that's what I'm calling motherhood from now on. I'm like, it's domestic engineering,
Exactly.
actually. We're going to get a bit into that as part of this interview as well. But one thing I just want to say is like, I know you as an incredible healer. I have a really great friend who anyone I talk about, anyone that I recommend, she goes and gets sessions with. And so she's been to everyone who's been on this podcast, everyone who hasn't been on this podcast who I've talked about, and she still will say the session she had with you was the most powerful healing session she has ever had.
Wow. Oh my
And I've
gosh.
never
Don't
told
make
you
me
that.
cry. Oh my goodness.
I've never told you that, Jess.
Oh my gosh. That makes my heart expand because, it's like whenever I kind of fly under the radar, you know that I just come in when I need to, and I kind of sort of disappear. And so I love hearing, from my clients and how people are experiencing their healing. And so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And, I appreciate you and the work that you do. So I want to get into it, and I'm going to do it a couple sections at a time. And then I want to go into a bit on the mothering and the motherhood because we have a lot in common. We have a lot in common. So what came first, the mediumship or the healing?
I think the intuitive healing came first that I was aware of. So when I asked for, a sign or asked for my first teacher was an intuitive healer / medium channel. I didn't know what any of that meant when I called her in, but a lot of the work was really focused around healing yourself, opening up your abilities. And so I think like that's where I started. It was really anchored in that. And then the mediumship just opened up. And I was in complete denial of the mediumship. That was not something that I wanted to do. I was like, it's bad enough I got to tell people that I'm doing psychic work and that I'm working with this thing called intuitive energy healing. Now I have to tell people I'm working with spirits. Like it was just very odd to me. But once I started to understand my own development and understand my own energy, I was like, oh, I've been doing this my whole life. I just didn't realize that that's what I was doing. And so, yeah, but I was a reluctant medium for sure.
Yeah. What's funny is I feel like the opposite in the sense where I think because mediumship is evidential. It's like the most practical spiritual modality out there. I'm like, it's based in evidence. What's woo about that, right? To me, it's like the least woo-woo of all the things. And you're just like, mediumship, that's like, nope, that's out there.
Yeah.
It's like but it's probably what we're exposed to first as well. Like I've been exposed to mediumship my whole life. And so the healing for me, stepping into the healing, it's hard for me to believe like I'm a healer. So one of my questions I had for you is like the healing energy that you provide, does it come from like the well within or does it come through you
It
from
comes through
another
me.
plane?
Yeah, it comes through me. So I work with a multitude of guides. Oftentimes my guides will be like, Jess, can you get out of the way? Because I get attached to the evidence. I'm like, oh, what's that? Like I'm a seeker by nature. And so that was like a lot of my understanding of my own energy was me learning to get out of the way. And once I realized, like once I visualize myself sort of stepping back, something else kind of channels through me as I, navigate through the body and through, the spiritual stuff that's coming through for my clients.
Yeah. And is all your healing done with drumming as well?
So the drumming I do for myself. It's not
Okay.
something I usually call in. Like very rarely have I actually drummed because this specific drum that I have made with my hands was specifically for my own healing in my heart. But every now and again, I think I've only played it like maybe 3 times for somebody else in a session. And
Yeah.
it was just because I was channeling and then I grabbed it and I just started working the energy of the drum, and I was doing some what people would call light language. I don't know, but it wasn't my voice that was coming through. But this is usually for me, and just like the drum that you and I made together on your retreat, it's that drum is for myself. It's just for my own healing and waking up my sacral center, waking up my heart.
Yeah, I only drum for myself as well. So very, very interesting. Okay. So one thing I wanted to talk to you about because I didn't realize that we had this in common as well is that my mediumship abilities were dormant until I had my daughter in 2013. And when I was reading up, preparing for this interview, you also had your abilities in 2009 awaken through your birth experience. So talk about that whole awakening process.
So after the birth of my daughter, when she got to a place of being able to sort of move around the world, she kind of walked very early. She would go to the corners of the room and she would just sort of wave, or in the monitor, I would see like orbs of light. And I started to sort of remember my own nature when I was younger, but I didn't really think it was anything too far-fetched because I always believed in the spirit world. Like ever since I was little, I knew that there was something on the other side. That wasn't even a question for me. The question was if I had the ability. It was always like other people would have the ability. I didn't have the ability. But after the birth of my daughter and just her sort of going through her milestones and her beginning to talk to the corners of the walls and her saying my great grandfather's name who passed when I was 14 and her saying like having these very unique conversations, I was like, oh, I just felt like that rumbling happened in the body, and then it became more of like a dream space for me. I
Mm.
didn't know what mental mediumship was. I only knew mediumship is what I saw on television. And so when I would share messages from my dream space, like I'd say to a friend, oh, that's so weird. I had a dream about your partner and he said this. And it just felt like a coincidence to me. It didn't feel like mediumship. I was like, oh, what a coincidence. What a coincidence that that happened. And it wasn't until I started developing that I understood what mental mediumship is and what how I was like working the energy. But for that, I don't want to say like 7 years, it just would kind of come on and come off, come on and come off, come on and come off. And I'd get like these wild inspirations to like I was a carnivore by nature. I loved burgers. I loved fast food. I loved like junk food. And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden it was like go completely plant-based overnight. And so then I was like, oh, I'm gonna go plant-based overnight. Again, I don't know where that inspiration came from, but I did. And then things would open up a bit more and then it would sort of go dormant again, open up a bit more and go dormant. So I think what happened was I was having more, I think what I would call now is like psychic experiences, like predictive experiences versus mediumship experiences until about 2015.
Mhm.
Then it really became like, oh, this person's dad just came to me and they showed me this interesting item. Like, why would I know about this item? And I'd say this to a friend, like, do you have this item?
Yeah.
Like, how do you know that? I'm like, I don't know how I know that, And then I had one of my dear friends lost her partner. And one time I was just driving and I saw a very clear box that she was going through with her son. And it felt like he was standing behind me, just showing me what they were doing. And I gave her all the details of what I was seeing from this dreamscape. And she was like, Jess, I literally did this last night. Me and my son were looking through all of the memory box because he was missing his dad. And I was like, okay, that is so weird. And so by the time I decided to go into development, again, I was very reluctant because I was afraid of what that would mean for me and what it would mean for my family. I just thought spirits were going to be hanging out with me all day long and they weren't going to leave me alone.
Right. We're going to get into that too. Right, because the other thing we share is we're both married to muggles, and we will
Yeah.
talk about this all after. No, that's incredible. And I often wonder because I've taught mediumship for quite a long time now. Yeah, 7 years. That's a while, right? But um, there's two origin stories. Well, three actually that I see the most common. One is a near-death experience. Two is a significant loss. Three is through the birthing process. These are probably the three most common gateways into mediumship development, mediumship awareness, I should say, that I have seen out there. And I can't help but think for those of us who opened up through the birthing of our children, how much of this is for them.
I do agree with you because my daughter's chart is screams mediumship. And so in my son's chart, I mean, he's born with his sun in the eighth house. He has wild placements. Like, and I'm just like, oh, okay, this is for them. It's not really even for me. But I was really fortunate. My husband, he grew up with a very spiritual mother. Like she's an astrologer, she's a healer. So when we got together, she would talk to me about these things and I was fascinated by it, but I didn't think it was something I could ever do. And over the years of us being together, and then me having my children, and then up into the point where my son was going to be born, she was like, this is something that you really need to seek a teacher for. I don't know if you know this, Danielle, but I went into spontaneous channeling at her house out of like full blown channel. I was like, what is happening? And my body was rocking. I was just channeling all these spirits. It was very scary for me. And then she just looked at me and said, you need to find a teacher. And I was like, where do you find a teacher? Like on Google? Like, how do you do this? Because,
Yeah.
back then it wasn't as accessible as it is now. And so, yeah, it was quite frightening. Like I couldn't get out of bed for days after.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
how was that discovery to find the first teacher? Was that Mavis by
It was
chance?
not Mavis. Mavis
Okay.
came about 6 or 7 months later, but I was crying in bed, praying. I'm like, God, just please, like, if this is something that I meant to explore, because clearly things are happening at such a rate, like the predictive stuff,
Yeah.
right before. Oh no, the channeling happened first. Channeling of spirits happened first. I want to say 6 months later, I predicted my husband's accident where he was nearly paralyzed.
Wow.
And then it was like, okay, I really have to find that teacher. So that in the beginning of the year, I went to go visit her and I was like, just praying. I was crying hysterically because I was like, this is what am I going to tell people? I left my career in dental to be a psychic medium. I was thinking like, flashing palm sign,
Yeah.
and it just wasn't something I was wanting to really do, and I just was like, please, 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 like if this is something that I'm meant to explore or try to like figure out for myself, I know I can feel I'm meant to be of service in some way. Just send me a teacher because I don't know what to do. And I cried myself to sleep. The next morning, I opened up my iPad on so I clicked the Safari, and my first teacher's website was on there, and her name's Brie Melanson, and her classes it was called Psychic Boot Camp.
Right. You like us Canadian girls because she's kind of local.
Wait, she is?
Yeah, she's from Vancouver.
I didn't know she was from Vancouver.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like, you're just drawn to us Canadian girls.
I guess so. I love her so much. And so, yeah. And so I was like, okay, so and I love, let's listen, Libra, Virgo rising. I loved her website. It looked very normy.
Yeah, yeah.
It didn't feel like it was going to be like this, what I thought the psychic and mediumship world would look like. And so, yeah, I just signed up with her right away. I didn't hesitate. And then that just kind of set me on my own journey into like literally full-time development. I started saying yes to everything. And then I
Yeah,
met
yeah.
Davis like 6 months later. Yeah.
Yeah, so I only bring up Mavis because this wasn't even part of originally what I was going to talk about, but it's jogging, so she's probably here.
Mhm.
But I studied with Mavis 2015, 2016, 2020, 2021. And then she passed away, of course, we know in August 2022. And then we both have visitations from her after.
Mhm.
So, I don't know how long you studied with her for, but she was somebody who kind of showed me like you can have a real deep reverence for the spirit world as a way to almost deepen that connection. And I have to say, she was very influential to me. And I have an unapologetic. I know you're not supposed to worship, blah blah blah. And I don't think it's worship. It's a reverence. And I got my reverence for spirit communication because of her and her teachings.
Yeah, when I met her, I was studying with a teacher here in Santa Monica. I was actually kind of tag teaming between two Santa Monica teachers. One was very like military style, which I think I gravitated towards because I grew up in the military. So I was very pulled to her. Some people were afraid of her.
Yeah.
And then I had another teacher who was the exact opposite of that. And so when I sort of fell into the mediumship development, it happened so fast. It was faster than I had ever anticipated. My teacher had said, I think you need to seek out another mentor because you have to keep exercising this. And so I set that intention while I was with her, and I had a dream about this woman. I didn't know who she was. I had no idea who Mavis was. Like my I guess teachers of mediumship was like Teresa Caputo, or you think of like, the people that what Sylvia Brown, like the people
John
that I saw on
Edwards.
TV, John Edwards, like
Yeah.
that was my like idea of what mediumship was. I didn't know about some of these pioneers, as they say. And so I had a dream about this little woman, and I saw her glasses and I saw her sweet face, and I couldn't remember her name, but I knew it started with an M. And I went to my teacher and I was like, I had this dream, and I told her like who I saw and what she told me her first name was. And I said, I just saw a strong M name. And she goes, oh, you need to work with Mavis. She's the grandmother of mediumship. And that was exactly what I needed at the time,
Yeah.
because I was so used to this sort of like strict tension of energy. That's what I grew up in, like this just like tight energy. I was freaking exhausted by that. I just needed someone to hold me and say, you're going to be okay. And you don't have to fall into comparison, because it's very, very likely that you will. And I definitely did.
Yeah.
And so I just reached out and I was like, oh my God, she's in Europe. Am I going to fly to Europe? Like, Spirit, you're sending me to Europe? Like, what the heck's going on? I didn't know she was a teacher here in the States, or that she flew. I knew nothing about her.
Yeah.
And so I just went on her website. Filled out this like little questionnaire and sent like a little bio, or like of why I wanted to explore this. And they reached out right away and said, okay, you're going to come to New Jersey. And I was like, what? I'm not flying to the UK. Like, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
well, that's a relief. I'm just going to New Jersey. And so I signed up to be with her for a year.
Mhm.
And when I got there, I was like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, I am literally coming out of the womb. I'm with all these people who have been doing this for many, many years. They're professionals. I think there was maybe one or two newer people there, but everyone was a professional. And I was like, holy crap. Like, why am I here? What am I doing here? But I think I was supposed to be there with her just to, like you said, fall in love with the world of spirit, not with the evidence,
Yeah.
not with the practice circles or what felt like could be competitive. It reminded me of pageantry mediumship.
I mean, I haven't done either because I'm not a spiritualist either. I stayed out of the spiritualism circles, to be honest with you, but I did hear like a lot of that kind of like comparison and competitiveness and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But hearing it compared to pageantry, tell me more.
No, because it was sort of like this thing of, I think everyone wants you to do well, but I'm like, but do they want you to do well?
I had that happen. I had to call someone out one time, but I was with Claire McNall at the time. And I had to say, I'm like, I don't think this person wants me to do well. Like,
Yeah.
I
And
had
I
to call it
remember,
right out. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And I remember being like, there's enough spirit for everyone. Like, why does it have to be? This is such a hard place to be. Like, we're here going, hey, I talk to the world of spirit. Like, that's hard enough, right?
Yeah.
And so when I arrived there, I immediately, I mean, everyone surrounded me, but I also could feel energetically what was happening between, the crowd of people that were there. And I was like, I don't want to be in an environment that feels like this. Now, again, I was picking up on stuff intuitively, and then I was also seeing some things. But I went to Mavis. She was outside smoking her cigarette out in front of the church, and that was another thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm in this little church in New Jersey. Like, where am I? Like, I was just like, I felt like I got transported into like this weird place, and I was like shaking. And I am somebody who, if you don't know me, I can be very reserved and I observe a lot. But if you know me, I'm kind of wild and crazy. I was like quiet, just
Mhm.
super quiet. And she was outside smoking and I was outside pacing, like, what did I just sign up for? And she just said, hey, how are you doing? And I said, Mavis, I don't think I'm supposed to be here. And she goes, what do you mean? I go, I just don't think I'm supposed to be here. I said, I'm literally just coming out of my mother's womb to mediumship. Like, I'm like 8 centimeters or something like
Yeah.
that. I'm like, I'm not. And I'm like, I think this is demonstration work. Like, I don't even know if I'm a real medium. Like, I don't even know why I'm here. And she was so sweet. And she said, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And all these other guys, I gotta like untrain them. She's like, you're fresh as a daisy. And she goes, so just enjoy the process, and I'm going to teach you how to fall in love with the world of spirit. And she really did. And so I'm really grateful that I got to spend that time with her. But through that process of being in that year mentorship, I felt like it was coming to a close halfway through. And I
Mhm.
didn't understand what that meant, but my guides were like, just prepare, it's coming to a close. And then we found out she was getting sick, that she was sick. And
Yeah.
then 2020 happened.
Yeah.
And so it was like, oh, okay, that closed up very quickly. But I'm very grateful that I got to be in her space. And she does come through every now and again to remind me, like, hey, don't forget about the spirit world, because I take breaks
Yeah.
from mediumship.
Yeah.
And then I come back in, and I've been on a little bit of a break from doing traditional mediumship. And so she'll come in just to remind me, don't
Yeah.
forget love for the spirit world. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. A couple things I love is I agree, like her lecturing. When I first started developing in my first 2 years, I went to bed every night listening to Gordon Higginson lectures, and I know that was her mentor. So the first time I saw her, I was like, "Tell me about Gordon." I felt so
Yeah.
bad. I'm like, "Just tell me about Gordon. I need to know more about this character." But she just did have such a beautiful reverence, and I think that that can bring you back to humility really
Hmm.
quickly. And she did, and I'm glad that you touched on it because that kind of competitiveness, that lack of feeling that true support, like what we've experienced in spirit school, and I'm sure the spaces that you facilitate and hold as well. But I think we do better because we've seen that out there, right? And so we're able to kind of like make spaces that feel a bit more inclusive. Again, there's enough dead people to go around, all that fun stuff. But Mavis wrote poetry on this exact topic. She would write poems about it. She would write lectures about it. And so she was never afraid to kind of like talk about that head first as well, even if her spaces did kind of contribute to it. She very much was accountable to that, and she would again like write poetry about it. So I'm glad that that really came up. And it was interesting. The first dream I had about her, and I don't dream very much at all, but the first dream I had about her after she died, I was for some reason pushing a tandem bike around downtown Vancouver. And I hate, like, I moved out of Vancouver 20 years ago and I'll never go back. And I'm like, I don't like being downtown Vancouver at all anymore. And I was like pushing around this like tandem bike, and I was so frustrated and so angry, and I was just busy, 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 kind of representing where I was at in life. And I saw Mavis smoking outside of this little hole in the wall spiritualist church that she just looked so at peace, and she just brought me messages around being more present, and you don't have to be mad about this, like just these beautiful messages. And she's like, I have to go.
Hmm.
And she went into this little spiritualist church, like that was like kind of in Chinatown, like downtown Vancouver. And I think that that really speaks to the life that she lived. It's like there's nothing fancy to see here. And that's kind of what I do appreciate about that, because everything I do at Spirit School is next level. It's like
Yeah.
beautiful, it's curated. It's when you walk in, you feel like you're in an elevated experience. And that's kind of what my brand is. But hers was always very like a simple, back to the basics, back to the roots of what mediumship is. It's not about you, it's not about the fanciness. And I really did appreciate that simplicity. And that really came through in my first visitation from her in that dream.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she's there's something about her. I'll never forget her. She asked me to come up to do a dem like that first week that I was there, and I was like, I can't do it. And she's like, I'll get you up here. Spirit, like by the end of the week, she's like, has there anybody who hasn't done dem? And everyone's looking at me, and I was like, oh yeah. And I swear, Danielle, it was not me. I feel like spirit just raised my hand and popped me up, because I like put my hand over my mouth, like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And she's like, come on up. And she was working her energy through my solar plexus just to help me hold the space. And her love is just, I can still feel it when I talk about it. She truly does feel like my grandmother. And so
Mhm.
I'm really fortunate that I got to experience her before she passed. And she's somebody that comes in quite a bit. Actually, yesterday as I was moving my stuff through my house, because, the remodel that my husband dropped in my lap, I was going through all of my books, because we're going to be sleeping in the spare room, and I have lots of mediumship book, all of my shamanism books, all of these things, the cards, and my husband's quite sensitive, and so I was like, I should probably move these things out so they're not at his feet while he's sleeping. Like, I can deal with it, but I don't know how he's going to sleep. And as I was pulling through my books, I found her book, and I was like, oh, and I dusted it off and I left it in the shelf. So And
Yeah,
obviously she has given us like a little wink here today. So, but very, very,
absolutely.
very, very grateful that I got to have that experience with her.
Yeah, and I'm glad we got to bring her up and touch her. I'm pretty sure I have her book right here
Yeah.
with Spirit. Yeah, I got a couple of her books here and Droplets of God as well. And
Droplets of God. I love that book, Droplets of God.
yeah, I felt like we were lucky. We got to really participate because neither of us are spiritualist mediums.
Mhm.
And I love though that we both identify as spiritual mediums. Isn't that
Yeah.
funny? Because like you and me are the only people that I know really identify with that title,
Well,
like
and
spiritual medium.
and it's interesting too, because when I was trying to like lean into what I wanted to be called, like, and Spirit kept saying, like, it doesn't matter, but I didn't want to be known as like a psychic medium.
Me
Even
neither.
though that's the work that I do. I mean, I'm a psychic and I'm a medium, yeah, but I just felt I knew I was going to be doing something deeper with people. Um, and I would just ask Spirit, like, okay, like you know, what wants to channel through me? And I heard two things. I heard spiritual medium and I heard soul medium. And
Mm.
I don't know why. I was like, okay, spiritual medium, because that's the first thing that came through. I'm like, I'm just gonna trust it. And I just put spiritual medium. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And I think for me, it was just spirituality because I'm not
Mhm.
religious in any way,
Yeah.
is at the root of everything that I do. So it's like even my sessions, I don't call them mediumship sessions because sometimes people don't need mediumship when they work with me. And so I'm like, they're just spiritual sessions, helping people to reconnect with their spirituality, connect with a spirit communicator, connecting with their own spirit and their higher self. And so the word spirit, I mean, it's tattooed on me in Swampy Cree syllabics. This means spirit, my
I
tattoo.
love
And
that.
it's just to me, it's just a really powerful vibrational word. And it just resonates at the same vibration of what I feel I put out into the world. That's why I kind of like picked it. Um, I've done like modern medium, angel medium. I've done so many different things over the years, but never psychic medium. Because again,
Yeah.
we're definitely in like this time of like language reclamation. And,
Mhm.
we can really take back some of these words that have a stigma around it and like repurpose them. And we've seen that with words like freedom, right? Like we've seen
Mhm.
people kind of like take words and make it something different. And so we can reclaim the word psychic, but I'm also open for something new, right? Just
Mhm.
something new. So now I want to go back because I've done some recent podcast episodes, some pretty in-depth ones about, being married to someone who is, he grew up with a spiritual mom. So there's a different experience altogether there. But it sounds like we also both were all in our development journey. Like when I had that first mediumship experience, I told Spirit I was devoting the rest of my life to be in their service. And I hold true to that devotion to this day as I did 13. I shouldn't say that, 11 years ago. And I know how all encompassing the development journey can be because when it's exciting, we're waking up. Two, we're traveling to places like New Jersey. Three, it can be a bit of a financial investment if you go the mentorship route as well. So, babies young, husbands probably like you used to work in dental and now you're like globetrotting North America, meeting UK mediums. Like, talk about those early years and like what was that like? And tell me more.
He was like, shit, I married my mother.
Ew. No kidding.
I know.
But
Well, I was very fortunate because my husband, it's so funny when I think about even when we met. I think I asked him his sign when we met, and he's like, "I'm a Pisces." He's like, "And are you a witch like my mom?" Like, because I asked him that. But he's very spiritual. He uses a different language than I would use. We don't talk in the same language, but he's definitely somebody who's very in touch. Like, he was doing quite quantum concepts when I was like just a normie, and I'd be like, "What are you talking about? You're so weird," you know. But by the time all of these things were sort of happening, he was like, yes, it's energy, like da da da. Like we went on to a wedding in Mexico where we both got like hit by these like spirits in Mexico that were like, it was very tribal. It was very like indigenous sort of awakening. And I can look back at it now and go, oh, I was meant to be there for that reason. But at the time we were both like, he's like, don't talk about it. Don't be negative. Don't increase like any negative energy, be positive. And so he's always sort of been this person that has sort of reminded me of that, like stay positive. Cause I would go into fear before I would
yeah.
get scared. But when I was like Paul, I've got to deepen my awareness around this. This is getting crazy. He finally was like, you need to figure this out, because I had already predicted a handful of things that were going on with our family, and then the accident being one of them.
Yeah.
He was like, you have to do whatever you need to do to make you happy. As long as you're happy, I'm going to support it. Now, what did he know what that meant? I don't think he knew what that meant. I
Yeah.
think he thought I would just kind of entertain the idea and just like, we'll just entertain her for a minute. But like I said, I went into full time development, signing up for classes, investing thousands of dollars into mentorships, courses, this, that, like whatever it took for me just to understand. And he rode along with it. He was like, okay, okay, okay. So when the mediumship came up, though, that's where he was like, oh shit, here we go. Here we go. He's like, we have these small kids. Like,
Yeah.
what's going to happen in the house? And I was like, they're fine. Everyone's going to be fine. And even though in my inside, I was like, I hope everyone's going to be fine. I was like, everything's going to be fine. Um, he was very positive and he was supportive, but he's even said, even most recently, he's like, I love what you're doing. He goes, but I don't think you understand what it's like to live with a psychic, medium, healer, intuitive. He's like, I watch you hold space in such an incredible way for others, but I'm watching your health decline to a point where you can't even go outside sometimes because you need to sleep for 3 days because you've been working for 2 days.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow. I never really thought of it from that perspective, because here it is. I'm doing this work that I love so much. And I feel it is my calling. I feel like I found my purpose or purposes and what I'm meant to do with this energy and how I'm meant to move through the world. But I never really thought about, one, what it was doing to me physically, and two, what my family was experiencing.
Right.
And so in the beginning, he was very supportive, but then he'd have to have some harder conversations with me. And now he's like, can you do a reading on me? Can you
Yeah.
tell me?
Pull some
Da-da-da-da.
cards. Where's my
And
transit going this year,
yeah,
right? Transit
he's like,
astrology.
what do you think about Bitcoin? Like, and again, he's like, I literally married my mother. And so he's been around this, and our conversations are very deep and can be very philosophical and very spiritual. And so I do have that component, but he's here in the world to like take care of, human things. He runs a business and he's a dad and he's a baseball coach and he's a this and he's that. He's like, can we just like not do that right now? So I
Yeah.
get both ends of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Kane, you touch on something I haven't talked about on the podcast. We've talked about different philosophy circles within the Spirit School Collective on this topic, but the health impacts of this work, the health
Yeah.
impacts of this work, where do you think that comes from? Do you think it's necessary or unavoidable? And then what do you do now you know better? What are you doing?
Well, I have to tell you, it's been a process of me learning and understanding as I go. Before I had my awakening, I thought I had autoimmune disorders. I like all these things were going on, and every doctor and every functional medicine, they're like, no, you're healthy. Everything's great. And I'm like, what? And I just was on my own health journey before I said yes to this, work. And then once I said yes to the work, I felt my health start to get better.
Mm.
But what I will say is, the minute I started doing readings, I instantly gained 10 pounds. And when I would talk to my body would say, you don't feel safe. And so I was like, oh, shoot. And so I think what people see, what we do, they're like, wow, that's so expansive. It's so amazing. But I don't think what people understand what we do behind the scenes is we're holding space for a lot of people's pain,
Mhm.
grief, and how that plays a role on just my upbringing and the things that I have been through. So I'm on a constant journey of checking in with myself. And as much as people see my life, I put probably more than half of what I make back into my health.
Yeah.
I'm like constantly getting massages and acupuncture and working with a hormonal doctor. Like, I don't know, Danielle. Sometimes I think like we don't know what this work is doing to our physical body. Like we
We
truly,
don't.
truly don't. Like we see what we are holding space for others. We see, how we're helping others. But I do think that it can sometimes come to at the expense of our physicality. And so I have to be very, very diligent about my health. In the beginning, I was in complete adrenal fatigue. I was exhausted. I had energy sickness. I would have said, no, I'm fine, because I was seeing the results of what I was holding space for. But again, here's my loved ones looking at me going, Jess, you have migraines. You haven't been able to get out of bed for 2 days. And I'm like, oh, that's okay. Just leave me alone.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and so no, I've had to really, really rearrange my entire schedule and how I do things to take care of myself first.
Yeah.
I've had to raise my prices so that that justifies me like not seeing X amount of people a day. And I have give myself a cap on how many people I'll see a day and how many people I'll see a week. But now I'm having to change my whole mindset on no, you're going to go for your walk. You're going to take care of yourself. You're going to make sure you eat your 30 grams of protein. You're going to make sure you're taking care of yourself first before you show up for your client. And I'm learning how to do that. It's a new habit that I'm navigating right now. The last 6 months, I've been on a very deep health journey, and it's been very successful, and I'm very grateful. But I'm also one of those people that once I see results, I can sort of slip away,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And so, yeah, it's so I think that when you do this work, like just remember to put yourself first, because sometimes we forget to do that as facilitators and as space holders.
Yeah, there's so much I want to say. So when I saw you at the retreat, I was like, wow, Jess looks amazing. Like not just like the bod and stuff like that. And I'm obsessed with your wardrobe. Whenever I come to California, you and Trish are taking me shopping wherever you guys go because you and Trish are my like fashion icons.
Oh,
But you both really are. But you just look like really glowing. You could tell you were taking really great care of yourself as well. And I mean, there's so much I want to say because this comes up a lot. Like we just really don't know the health impacts of this work. And I also want to validate for you that whole, I think all of us have like this, when we're moving away from dental care or healthcare. I was in healthcare, you were in dental care, and we're like, okay, well, I'll just charge like $100 and do like 5 readings a day. And then you're like, but what if I get sick for a week? Right. And it's like you're kind of like working on that same mind frame and system that society has, but society is not conducive for healers. Society is not
mhm,
conducive for the helping profession in any capacity. Teachers, nurses, all these helping professions have compassion fatigue, adrenal fatigue, health problems because we're not held, we're not cared for. And when I did that program, The Trauma of Money, it was life-changing for me. And one of their decolonization pathways was actually charging for rest and
mhm,
incorporating into your prices that you actually do need a bit more rest in the helping profession than a non-helping profession, especially people like, I'm clairsentient. So and I need clairsentience because of my doubting mind, because I'm like, I need to feel this or it didn't happen. Right. And so I
mhm,
use my body a lot in my mediumship, like where I can feel what they experience or that fear or the sorrow or the grief. So I'm actually, to a lesser severity experiencing what the communicator is trying to message through. And so, we know through the science of the nervous system, my body doesn't know the difference between it actually happening or it not happening. So it's
mhm,
like, I'm sacrificing my own body to be of service to the world. We don't know the longer term effects of that. I too have not been the best at taking care of myself or balancing that. And I don't know if you've thought this too, like where I have to balance more my home life versus my servitude life is when I'm in bed and I'm just trying to get better for the next session.
mhm,
Like how messed is that? And it's like we should be like, hope I can take my kids to school tomorrow. But because we're in such a service mindset, which is how come I have the Sacred Spirit retreat like I do now, it's like I want this to be for you guys because we always consider other people. We always try to get better to be of best use to spirit or to humanity. But we very rarely offer ourselves that exact same level of commitment or consideration. And so yeah, there's a lot to unpack with this, but whether it's nervous system, what we hold space for. I'm glad that your husband said that to you, though. I'm sure my
yeah.
husband hearing this, if he's listening, will probably say something similar.
I know I don't like to hear it all the time because he's usually 99.9% right.
Yes.
He has a really like he sees things way in the future. That's how he picks them up. Like he saw me when I met him. He's like, "You're going to have your own business. And you're going to help people." And I was like, "No, are you kidding me? I like my job. I go to 3 days
Yeah.
a week. I get bonuses. I like that. I know what to expect every day. Like I couldn't see myself as a business owner, right?" And so he saw that long before it ever happened. And so he was just like saying to me, he's like, "I'm watching you decline," and I'm like, but I wasn't seeing it within myself until I went to the doctor for a physical and I weighed 20 pounds heavier. And they were like, you need to take care of yourself. And I was like, wait, where did this come from? It just
Yeah.
happened so fast. And I do think that, like we said, I'm very physical as well in my work and bringing energy through my body. Like when I'm reading I feel it. I feel what's happening in the body. I feel the heart attack. I feel the this, I feel the that. Like And so I've been like having to always nurture that sacral part of myself. And again, the replenishment is key. And so, being in your space and being at the retreats and all of those things is a huge part of my work. Like I have to take care of myself. Like I have to, because I want to be of service through my life. Like this is something I don't ever see myself walking away from.
Yeah.
But the balance for me, the balance between work, home, children, like I'm a Libra. I guess that's what I signed up for, is like really finding what that means for me. And it changes every year. It
Yeah.
changes, like I work in quarters basically, like every 3 months, my gifts change. I've known that after tracking them for 7 years. And I used to plan a year in advance, and I don't do that anymore. I only book out 3 weeks in advance. I don't open my calendar beyond that. And right in, like, as of even the last 6 months, my calendars are closed, and I've only been doing pop-up sessions because I'm like, I need to take care of myself right now. And so
Yeah.
that's sort of the journey I've been on recently.
I have been very similarly for the past 2 years in particular. I only release sessions for the next month, the month before, and I don't tell anyone about them. Whoever sees them kind of like
Yeah.
snags them. You have to, because you just don't know what life's going to be like or where spirit is going to need you. And I think too, you and me have been very blessed in our careers where they have expanded far beyond mediumship. Like
Hmm.
what the spirit where they have us serving expands beyond mediumship. And so, um, there's a lot to hold space for and a lot to take into consideration. It's an honor for sure, but I know that I can definitely do better myself in like the home front and like with the
Hmm.
kids, because I know for my lifestyle, I do need quite a bit of quiet time. I
Hmm.
need a bit of quiet time, and I can't always get that in the day when I'm like working and serving. And then what's the alternative? It's like cuts into their time as well. And I think that's where I'm currently like looking at summer and looking at fall. I have no more before and after school care now. My work life is actually getting a lot shorter, but I'm excited about the perspective of, what if work became a smaller part and the kids became a bigger part? Because I mean, they're going to be 11 and 8 this year. That time starting to kind of dwindle away when they're going to be out of the house and like doing their thing. You know
Yes,
what I mean?
exactly.
That balance. It's always a constant inventory check, isn't it?
Hmm. I have to check in with myself. Like I've actually been trying to even narrow it down even far, like further, because I've this last year I was like, okay, I don't like to work in the afternoons or the evenings. We talked about this. I'm like, my energies begins to shut down. I'm like, I'm done. I'm ready for bed at like 8 o'clock. Like I like that, taking a bath and having my own rituals of closing my own energy down. But I wanted to sort of work when my kids were in school. I didn't want to be working when they were out of school. And then I was like, but I also need to take care of myself. Well, my daughter, she has surf she's not in school now, but she's on the surf team, which means she has to wake up at 5:45. She's got to be down at the water by 6:15. I drive her. I take my dog. And so I was like, okay, that's kind of messing with my morning. But then I was like, you know what? I still don't want to see people till 10 or 11. And if that only means I get a couple hours to work with clients, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm training myself to take care of myself first.
Yeah.
And it's been really expansive for me. And I haven't been less busy. Like I still have, it's not like the clients are disappearing.
Yeah.
If anything, they're seeking me out more.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's what happens too, is sometimes when we're doing this work, we go into scarcity. We think, oh my God, if I close down my books, no one's going to come see me. I'm going to lose all my clients, or if I raise my prices. But what I will say is every time I've raised my prices and I have narrowed my schedule down, spirit has showed up for me in so many different ways. And I'm like, I'm supported. I'm
Yeah.
supported in the work that I'm doing. I feel like I'm even more supported the more that I take care of myself.
I have seen very similar things. I call it spirit math.
Yeah.
I'm like, because I don't know how the maths, but like I used to do like 15 client sessions a week, and now I do like 5 a month.
Mhm.
And, definitely holding more space for groups. So I'm excited for your transition into that. If you ever need help, please let me know.
Mhm.
Because I haven't done one-on-one work for a couple of years now, other than a couple of readings that I do a month. But it just, we're always supported. And I had to make a decision. And I know you're similar, and this is what we share, but like, I'm not a profit-centered business. Now, I'm not nonprofit. I do hope to be one day, spirit school at least, but when you're not a profit-centered business, that's part of the decolonization of business process in itself. And it feels very empowering. And I get very geeked out and excited about finding ways of being successful that are more honoring of the natural rhythms of our lives, which change with the seasons. And I love that you and Callie have like surf school because we have ski school here. It's
Yeah.
like kids go skiing. You
Mhm.
guys are going surfing, just totally different lifestyles. But yeah, I don't know if you have anything to kind of say about that. That's the kind of language I use because it's kind of where my career is just naturally kind of going, is like talking about some of the experimenting I've been able to do in the entrepreneurship space, in the healing art space, not only to like heal the intergenerational wounds when it comes to being compensated for healing work, because that's carried through not just our family lines, but the whole line of the healing arts as well. But then also
Uh-huh.
finding some sort of success out of the framework of capitalism as well, right?
Yeah, it's been an interesting, like when I first, did sessions, yeah, I mean, you helped me through that too, just healing the money, the money wounds, and being valued, well, finding myself valued and with the work that I'm doing. And so I've had to sort of play with that over the years. And every time I get the call to raise my prices, I have to go through my own healing journey of that, because the scarcity thing comes up, or like just all these feelings that come up through my ancestral lineage. I mean, there's so many stories on my mom's side and my dad's side around money, and so I've actually been working, for the last, I want to say, year and a half around healing my money story, and also healing my voice, and how I show up. But I think that, I've seen the wounded, healer archetype in my field. I've seen plenty of past lives where I have suffered for this work, and I'm rewriting that story. I'm not going to be doing that moving forward. And I think that, anytime someone has an opinion on how they perceive our work, I've been really fortunate. I haven't had anyone challenge my prices ever. I have never had. Um, I've been very blessed. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because I work the energy of the people I want to work with. I call in a very specific person. I've never had a pushback, and anyone that falls off, I trust that they're meant to work with someone else now. I really do believe that.
Yeah.
But I think that we have to check in with ourselves, and say, like, okay, if I'm showing up to this, my little mat that I sit on, because I sit on the floor when I work, right? If I'm showing up here and I'm feeling, um, irritated by being here, if I'm feeling like, ugh, that dip on being here, anytime I start to feel that, I pause, I close down I make sure there's no access to my calendar, and I go in and I do some deeper work and go, okay, what's going on here? Like, why am I feeling this? Oh, I can feel how I'm not there for my family. I can feel how my kids are needing me in a certain way, or I can feel like, oh, actually, I need to spend more time here, like the seasons that we talk about. And so I like to check in with myself and go, okay, I didn't do that in the beginning. I had to learn. I had to
Yeah.
learn how to do that. But I will say, like, you know, as I move through this process over the handful of years, less is more.
Well, and that I'm so glad we're talking about this and I have someone to jam on this with because, last year hitting some pretty bad burnout after building the school and then
Mm-hmm.
everything that kind of came with that. Society saying you've just doubled your overhead, Danielle, you better get to work. But guess what? My soul and my body was like, you can't work like you did last year. You are at a deficit.
Yeah.
And so society says, book more, keep selling. And I actually decided to step back and lighten my load. I stopped teaching the initiation for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I got smaller group. Like I actually went the opposite of what scarcity says to do. And yes, maybe it didn't all come through my business, but my husband all of a sudden got this like payout from Warren Buffett for some like stocks we had in carbon capture, like from like
Mm-hmm.
years ago. And it was life-changing amount of money. And so it was like making decisions from the seat of the soul and for the benefit of the soul and like the humanity, you're going to be okay. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the great experiment. And I think that's what we're doing for this healing is like, I don't know how it works. I can't teach you this. I
Mm-hmm.
can't break this down in a framework. But whenever I make a decision in my integrity, for the integrity of my soul and for the quality of this work, I'm taken care of.
Absolutely.
Right? I'm taking care of. And anytime I like push because I'm like, well, how am I good? I have to write something right now in 6 weeks. I have 6 weeks to write something. Cannot do any sessions. I don't know how it's all going to come in, but I have enough evidence from doing this work for long enough full time now to know that I know I'm going to be okay no matter what. And I
Mhm.
have to leave some things over to spirit because I work on their behalf now. And I know that sounds pie in the sky, could get really critiqued for that, but it's just what I've seen.
Exactly. And I love the eye rolls that happen sometimes when we say that, but we've seen the effects of us actually trusting and leaning back into spirit. And I mean, spirit tells me all the time, just get out of the way, like just lean back. And I'm like, oh yeah, because I'm a recovering control freak, right? Like
Yeah.
right. And so I'm like, oh yeah, like if I can just get out of the way, and that is something that I truly believe. I believe that spirit will always take care of me as long as I am moving through my heart center. Like everything is going to be okay. And if
Yeah.
something falls out, I have to trust that it falls out. You know, it was really funny when we were on the retreat. We were sitting out on the lake, on the, what's that called? The little deck thing,
The
the little
dock. Yeah.
floating, oh, dock. Thank you.
You guys call them piers. We're docks, but yes.
Whatever, a little woody thing that you float on. We were sitting out there. I don't know if you remember, we're all sitting out there, and Jenny had opened up a bottle of wine, and I'm not a big wine drinker, but I'm like, sure, I'll have a glass with you. And I was having a glass with her, and I think she wanted me to take a picture, or I took a picture, and I stepped back and I spilled the whole thing of wine. And I didn't care. I was like, "Oh, whatever, wasn't meant to happen." And she goes, "That's what I love about you. You're just like, wasn't meant to be." And I'm like, "That's just how I've been trained by the world of spirit, is like, hey, don't hold on to anything physical. Like don't allow yourself to get too wrapped up in anything, and don't hold on to anything too tightly. Like just
Yeah.
like even with my properties, my husband was like, "What if we had to sell one of them?" I'm like, "Then we have to sell one of them. It's
Yeah.
okay." Like I'm grateful that I got to experience the energy that I've had with those beautiful locations. And if that's meant to close, it is meant to close, and I will honor it. And I'll do so many like land blessings for us having it be there, but I've had to learn how to loosen my grip.
Yeah. I have a meme running in my head. I'm sorry, but things are always going to go to memes. But it's like Jesus in a cave and it has a bunch of like steering wheels on the wall and it says all the steering wheels Jesus taken.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I know
But it
it's so
is kind of like
true.
that. It's like just, spirit creator, like whoever your highest power is. It's like, I hand this over to you. You know the intentions of my heart.
Mhm.
You know what I am here to accomplish. I hand it over to you. And I can't tell you how many times there have been things, even like the membership, where I've wanted to like kind of let it go because it does take up a lot of my time and resources in my company. But it's like every time I go to let it go, it's like I get this surgence of people kind of coming in, but only when I'm willing to let it go. I'm like, why? That's something I'm experimenting with. I'm like, every time
Yeah.
I love on it and I'm obsessed with it, it's like cancellations, like no one's coming in. And then I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's seen its season. All of a sudden, like 30, 40 people kind of come in. I'm like, how? Why? And I'm trying to uncover all the deeper lessons of that, but I've seen it in so many different areas of my business. I mean, even mediumship works the same. My
Mhm.
best readings are the most impromptu,
Yep.
just kind of like, I did one last week where we were doing something totally different. I said, hey guys, I just moved my awareness to spirit. There's a guy here, got his name, got the craziest details. And it's always when I'm the most passive and not attached.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there's so many lessons IRL that have the spiritual comparison. I mean, it's just also connected.
Well, you think too, right? Like how you're even talking about the membership, how some people fall off. Like I think we're meant to shed some people, right? Like so that we can bring in like whoever we're calling in next. And I think that it's important to do that. Like when we came back from the retreat, I was just sort of sending out, some inspiration to spirit. I was like, okay, like if I meant to launch this thing before the end of the year, just give me a magical sign that I cannot deny, because you know how we joke about it, right? The sign your sign. So it's like something that's very clear, because I am learning how to marinate on my inspirations, right? Like I get downloads very quickly and I'm like, then I move through and I'm learning to just go, okay, get the inspiration, start building on it. You don't have to jump in the water right away, Jess. Like you're just gathering the wisdom, the knowledge, and you're feeling into the timing of things. And so that's been something I've been playing with this last year. And so I got like all this inspiration. And of course, my like that Aries Marsy energy is like, what? Let's hurry up and go. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Just marinate, marinate. And so I asked for something magical, something that was like so clear that I'm still gathering the wisdom, and I can just keep at this pace until next year. And I go out on the beach after we return from the retreat, and I have, my little blanket out with my cherries and my basket. And here this ladybug lands on me, but not just a ladybug. It was a black ladybug. I've never seen a black ladybug before. I didn't even know they existed. And
Either.
I was like, you're
Just
a
one big
ladybug.
spot. I love
No,
it.
yeah, and I was like, it was just like a black, and it had the wings and everything. And I looked it up, and apparently it's a thing. It's literally about just trusting the timing and the process of the things that are magical that you're about to build. And so it's like, again, like I trust spirit. Like I really trust that when I ask for answers, that they will come. They may not come right away, but they will come over time. And I think that the more that we can lean into that trust, the more beautiful that our lives are. And I know that sometimes that's hard for people to like they're like, no, what do you mean? Trust, but there's so much magic in it when we allow ourselves to be moved by spirit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, your journey may have been similar to mine, and I would say the opposite to anyone who's kind of newer listening to this, but you probably will trust the spirit world before you start trusting yourself. But the magic really does happen when you lean into that same trust for yourself that you do external sources. That is the alignment,
Yeah.
right? That is usually the missing piece. And so yeah, just trust, even if things don't meet your expectation, that you've rebuilt how many times before perfectly fine.
Mhm.
And I think that's what keeps me really ballsy in my life is like I've rebuilt my life so many times, and every
Yeah.
single time had its own adventure and its own blessings. And I'm not afraid of that anymore. I'm not afraid of the work, right?
Yeah. Well, also too, like being okay to move forward, right? Like I think of, I work with a lot of women that will say like, well, it doesn't make sense for me to take that class. Like what's the end game of it? And for myself, like I say yes to things that inspire me. I didn't do that before. I'd be like, well, what's the end game if I take that course, And I get that. But for myself, what I've learned is the more wisdom that I'm sort of diving into, and just even things that I wouldn't normally do, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna take a pottery class. Like, why? I'm gonna make
Yeah.
pottery. Like, it's just like these things that sort of trigger that creativity and that inspiration. I do not regret a dime spent over the last 7 years. And let me tell you, people, I've spent a lot of money and
Yeah.
I don't regret a penny of it. I don't regret a class that I've taken. I don't regret a trip that I've been on. I don't regret any of it because it gave me that stepping stone to be in this version of confidence that I did not have before.
Yeah.
And am I a freaking coach for what's her name? Gabby Bernstein? No. But for whatever reason, I was meant to be in her sphere so that I could see like what it meant to be a spiritual, if we want to say coach, because I don't call myself a coach, but
Yeah.
to hold space like that. Because a lot of my clients called me a spiritual counselor, right? And
Yeah.
so for whatever reason, the very beginning of my journey, when my guides were saying you're a spiritual teacher, I was like, what the hell does that mean? Am I
Yeah.
a priest? Like, what am I? What are you talking about? Like, I didn't know what
Yeah.
that meant, right? Now I get it. But I needed to be there to see that built out. And now I look back at that whole thing that I took 7 years ago and I'm doing it. I'm
Yeah.
doing it now. And so I think that the more that we like lean into that curiosity and explore and land in places like Canada with you and land in places like New Mexico when my friends asked me to go last minute. I'm very fortunate I get to do those things, but I do trust that heart pull and that expansion piece that happens within my body. I didn't used to do that. I led by a lot of fear, and it
Yeah.
feels amazing to live from your heart.
Yeah, I love that. And it is walking the path that you teach and mentor and talk through as well. So just more embodiment, more integration. And yes, I love all of this. This conversation is incredibly fulfilling for me. And we touched on a lot of topics I've wanted to talk about for a while and just don't know how to do it on my own.
Mhm.
One-sided. So we'll have to have you come back and talk about some like ethical questions and
Oh, yeah.
considerations. I want to do a whole series on spiritual ethics. And so we'll have you back on the podcast for
I
Sir
love that.
Jessica Miles.
Jessica.
Jessica Miles. But if you want to, I just want to thank you for your time coming on here today. And, we'll definitely have you back. And if you want to share with the Spirit School listeners how they can get to know your body of work a bit more, how they can potentially work with you, just let us know.
Yeah, so I hang out on Instagram. That's the only social media that I find joy and humor in. So if you want to find me on Instagram, it's at People Call Me Jess. You can visit my website. It's Jessica Miles, Meils.com. I also have a few podcasts you can check out. But yeah, you can send me a message on Instagram or send me an email, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Absolutely. And I'll have all those links ready for you to just click on with ease in the show notes below. So thank you, Jessica, for coming, and we will see you again on Spirit School.
Yay. Thank you.